All right. I think we'll let people keep coming in, but we'll start anyways. So I'll turn on my video for a bit. I'll say hi to everybody else. And so today's topic, it's peculiarly very interesting. The reason being, we all want to implement blockchain in one way or other. We all see, so many interesting conversations happening around us. We all know technology now by a good bit. So we now would be thinking that what do we do with blockchain? What type of industries it would fit? What kind of use case we can actually do? And today's session is going to be more on analyzing how we map blockchain's characteristic with different type of industry use cases. Of course, we cannot do justice with the depths. Considering the session is not very long. Second, of course, I may not be the subject matter expert for everything. I may be okay with technology, but I may not be very, very, pioneer with different industry sets. Of course, my experience allows me certain bits into, some industry sets. I'll definitely expand into those. And then I think in today's session, we'll allow, our audience to come in because I know a lot of you have got a lot of expertise sitting on your brains and on your shoulders with years of experience, which can contribute more to this session. So we'll try to allow everybody to come in here and there at different points, be it through questions or through answers as well, to contribute, being subject matter experts in several many areas. So this is how we start. And like every other session, I'll turn off my camera, save the bandwidth, we'll stay focused on the slides, and we'll keep it interactive. Thank you everybody for joining in. Thank you again. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whichever part of the world you are. And let's start digging into some interesting blockchain use cases. So to start with, I'll just lay it out for you that what kind of industries or kind of domains we are going to be touching. I would say touching will be barely scratching the surface, but this is what we're going to be touching today. So we'll of course touch fintech. Fintech or finance industry is the most talked about since the inception of the blockchain. All people wanted to do is to think how payment systems, different financial institutions can be transformed and improved. And then real estate is one of those areas which never lost its essence. Whenever a new technology came around, specifically the digital era, gave it a new definition. How we used to see transaction in real estate. Data security, one of the veterans when it comes to technology solutions. Logistics took a lot of heat and also a lot of attention with COVID in play, and media and entertainment being the central of all sort of technology, experiments and innovations all the time. Healthcare, critical to you, critical to me, critical to everybody around us. So the more we improve it, the better it is. Transportation, of course, e-commerce, retail, and government sectors. And then beyond this, we got defense and aerospace, we got telecommunication. How could I miss telecommunication here? So, there are other industries too we can touch upon. And then I think, we'll invite more inputs from the audience in the question. Feel free to type in the sense that what you would want to talk about, not just, what you would want to hear from me. But of course, if you would want to talk about some industry, share your experience, we'll keep our session that way, because it's just, circling the knowledge forward, not just paying it forward. So that's our mantra for today. And now let's move forward to what we have done so far. We as a group, we've been together for several many weeks now. And these two episodes which we've done in the past, one was focused on cost of ownership, doing blockchain, how much it costs, how do you plan it, how do you bring it all together, how do you make all the noise and pull the drums and actually get going in action. So that was, focused on those. And of course, it was the enterprise approach we were talking. It was the enterprise discussions we were having back in the days. So it was all, cost of doing enterprise blockchain solutions. Now, second, which we picked after that was how to design an enterprise blockchain solution. In designing, we covered everything, all sort of aspects possible, including architectures, including, different kind of on-chain, off-chain plans, including data structures, schemas. And in fact, we also, in the end, talked about how you can, as an individual, plan, the whole POC to go to market or productionalization, life cycle, how you can plan it within your organization. So we have covered these two things. Today, we're going to be covering what you can pick as a use case, and what kind of industries are doing what kind of use cases, and we're going to try to map the blockchain characteristics with those use cases. I may be a little sloppy today at questions, but I'll try to keep going back to questions and going back to the session as much as possible in between. So bear with me. Yeah. So if you look at finance, this industry is very, very wide. Now, what this industry needs, or what kind of, so when you actually, so the topic of the day is use case analysis. So we'll not be, pinpointing a specific use case, spending an hour on it. Rather than that, we'll be actually going through, the peculiarities of what matters in what industry and why do you apply blockchain to it? Because that's how use cases emerge, and that's how you would be able to ideate not just what we'll speak today, but beyond that. So what matters to financial industry as of today, what we see out there requires more security, yet with a lot of transparency. I know that your brain is starting to, do those reactions already and starting to map it all with, what we have learned in the last two sessions. But I'll try to, reiterate and map it myself as well along with you. So security and transparency is a need for today's financial system or transactional systems. Transparency comes out of blockchain as a principle of its design. You don't have to program it, you just have to architect it the right way. Why I'm saying architect it the right way? Because in the last session we learned that how it matters and how it is in your hand, as the designer of the solution, to plan what stakeholders would come in, what data they'll hold, and what they would share in between them, and how would you design the transparency out of your solution. So it's the characteristic of the blockchain, and it's the orientation of the ledger which makes you do so very easily. So in financial systems, specifically the payment systems, the core goal is to make it dispute free. How do you make it dispute free? By allowing parties to access some or up to a good amount of information which is relevant to them, conceal or isolate what is garbage to them, and design a solution which further enhances the security and transparency into the solution. Now, security, because you don't want a system to be single point of a failure or to have a single point of failure in any sense. So you design it in a way that you allow a payment system to be self-sustainable, running in a way that it cannot be compromised easily. I'll just take an example of any cryptocurrency as of today. Now, this cryptocurrency would allow you to have transactions, would allow you to have secure transactions, and would allow you to have transparency in what transactions have taken place till date. How? Because it's owned by multiple stakeholders in the system, and these stakeholders drive it jointly. And when they drive it jointly, it means that not one party can compromise the system, and every transaction gets stored into all those ledgers, and all those ledgers are the reason why it is dispute proof. And then you got in some advanced blockchain ecosystem protocols, you got smart contracts, which further enhances the level of transactions, the type of transactions, the complexity of transactions you can do, which of course a financial or a banking system of today would require. And then settlements, you would want instant settlements when there are no intermediaries in play. When there is no maker and checker kind of a scenario happening through a manual or through an intermediary, then this is usually faster and better. Of course, again, coming back to the point of dispute, you can understand it that if an intermediary is not there and it is managed by the technology underneath, then it's of course dispute free as well. But settlement instantly means more than just that. Nowadays, we all do payments. We all do, even do micro payments. Specifically, if you talk about, a region on the globe, like, a region in Asia, India, there are billions of micro transactions happening every day. And in those scenarios, if you would keep a middle party or, some middleman in the play, maybe it's a financial institution or a bank, and specifically when a transaction happening between two users, working with two different financial institutions, maybe two different banks, and then there is a middle party which settles the transactions. It means that a lot of reconciliation is supposed to happen, and when that happens, it takes time. So usually they keep the buffer between them. They settle at the end of the month and all, but this really means that not only for a user, but in the whole ecosystem, the transaction actually settles in real time. Now, in real time, maybe a little complicated to understand, considering a lot of you or me must be thinking right now that, oh, Ethereum takes like minutes to settle a transaction. How about Bitcoin? It does not do that in seconds or even like minutes. So how can we talk about instant settlement? So right now we're not just focusing upon those public protocols. We are focusing upon very specifically designed use cases, maybe built on not if public then permission protocol as well. For example, India has recently launched their central bank digital currency for a wholesale segment, not for the commercial public segment yet, but for a specific segment. When they've done it, they've used a blockchain protocol at the back, and that protocol allowed them to build a settlement system which is comparatively faster than publicly available cryptocurrencies. But of course, I'm not advocating for such a system which is built on a permission blockchain. But of course, but comparing public blockchains, it's of course efficient. It fits in more government kind of in a structure. That's why they did it. I assume only. This is my own opinion. I'm not favoring it. But nowadays, a lot of protocols are claiming to be achieved 100,000 TPS transaction per second as well, which means that you are very equivalent to what MasterCard and Visa cards are promising in existing days or are processing in existing time. So settlement, but of course it kills a lot of dispute. It kills a lot of reconciliation needs. Of course, a lot of efforts on machines and man both. Then comes better auditing, because we talked about faster settlement, no reconciliation needs means better auditing. You can always plug in, an auditing party into the ledger by allowing them to host a node, by allowing them the access to the ledger so that, they can go through all the transactions. And in fact, they don't even have to audit because they can trust what they see. They don't have to reconcile again and again. Their node would be having all the ledger transactions into it, and they can actually be able to, trust the data, what it has. Initially, people would still prefer the best practices, so they would still go on auditing. But if you would see the nature of a blockchain node, when it starts syncing the data and all, when it starts accepting the blocks, there is a process which is called block validation. When that happens, practically we are, we are actually auditing automatically. And like as Anoop said, in the Q&A, that audits are a thing of the past. That's pretty much true. Audits are done. We're done with the audits. Why do waste time on things which machines can handle better than us? And in fact, why to audit when there is no need to audit? Things are already reconciled in that sense. And when you do all that, when you enable a system to have these kind of capabilities, you reduce cost. By cutting down middlemen, you reduce a lot of cost, because when a middleman or a financial institution is there in between, there is a transaction, there is a cost to everything, and that cost is to be paid, in a transaction itself. But then a lot of people question Ethereum the other way. They feel like, oh, a simple transaction costs you $40. Does it make sense? I say, yeah, it does not make sense. But we're not talking only Ethereum here, right? We're talking a lot of advanced third generation protocols too, which are now changing the face of how we used to see the transaction cost as well. So comparing the transaction cost of what a blockchain enabled solution can offer tomorrow would be, if not at par, if not better, at least would be at par, I must say, to the existing systems. And this is how technology actually comes in. It does not comes in on day zero, day one, or maybe the first year itself, telling you that it can solve everything you've got as a problem with you. No, it does not. So what we are seeing, from the times of minutes of transactions to seconds to tomorrow, in fact real time, it would happen soon. And when that happens, even Ethereum, we have seen, they have moved from proof of work to proof of stake. On the focus, one of the focus I would say was to reduce the cost of transactions. Layer 2 protocols, they came in to reduce the cost of transaction, the gas fee and all. So we are already looking into, an improvement, or, another version of it, which is coming out, improvised version, which is focusing on the problems which came out of the phase 1. So phase 1 was focused on putting out a solution, or putting a solution out in the market to put it as an alternative that, this is what is available, actually can be used and can make some things better. But then came with it were some challenges. And now the second generation of chains, started solving those challenges. Third generations would, solve further. And then, ultimately, I would say, I would sum it all in the sense that security, transparency, settlement times, better, or in fact not required auditing, and the reduced cost of transactions and the ecosystem itself, it allows us to get to the technology in a better way. It allows us to trust it, adopt it, make it functional, execution in a better way. But then what it gives us is a sense of control on whatever can happen. It's a sense of control on risks. That's what's important in the enterprise ecosystem in the end. So whatever systems are we building here are as effective as they are effective in mitigating different risks. So this technology allows us to build systems which cuts down a lot of risks in terms of how do we see control. I would define control in different way. Control is in not having choices. So when you build a financial system today, you don't have choices. There are standard compliances and guidelines which are defined. So usually those guidelines, compliances, regulations are defined to meet these kind of characteristics of what a system or a strong banking or financial system must have. So these compliances and regulations and validity rules, when they are embedded into code in a way that they cannot be changed, cannot be tampered, when a machine is enabling, along with so many other machines, the decision making, pulling in human context as well, then you effectively control risk in systems by not having limited choices, but having choices which actually can help us achieve these characteristics. Now, if we jump on to real estate, it's quite a shift, but what we would realize during our conversation is that even if it is this use case or that use case, the intentionality of the characteristic of blockchain application would remain the same. I'm telling you this again because when we have that intent to apply blockchain to a use case, then it gets done right. So we don't have to apply blockchain just because blockchain is there. It's a technology, it's a better technology, or it's a newer technology. We have to look into the use cases possibility. And when we do so, we would realize that most of the characteristics of the blockchain are the ones which drives the use case. We'll see how. So when you apply it to real estate, again, these are the things which you would require or you would want to see as an outcome, and how blockchain makes these outcomes happen. I think this is what our use case is all then in the end, because if you see an industry, a business function would remain a business function. An apple would remain an apple. You cannot change the characteristics of the apple. So we're not changing the business use case at all. We're simply redefining it in a way that still it meets the same outcome, what it is expected to, but is done a different way, is transacted a different way, it is executed a different way, or maybe audited a different way. So we just, redesigning the perspective around it, its implementation, its execution, but we're not changing the business function at all. For example, if it's payment, you would want to do payment, you would want to buy pizza, make payment, you would want to transact. You're not changing that. You're just simply changing the underneath layer of it, how it is done, how it is getting to you, how it is getting to the other guy, how it is getting you the features which you would want out of financial system. Same happens with real estate. what you want. You would want tools and technologies which allow system to offer you a very seamless experience when you look at property, real estate property. And property is supposed to be bought, it is supposed to be sold. Again, these are some types of transactions we are talking about here. And then when anything like that happen, in today's time, we are very accustomed to create applications which interacts easily with us. That's why there are interfaces where you would want to look for property. How would I look for property if I don't have properties listed somewhere? So that's why a lot of real estate tools nowadays, they create a database of property, who owns what and when it is available, who's selling what, at what cost it's being sold and all. So they're creating a database of the property. Now imagine a world where everybody has got some property, and if they start tokenizing this property, and when they start tokenizing this property, they're storing it in their wallets. Those wallets are connected to a common chain ledger. When that happens, you got a very different approach to how do you search properties, how do you list it, how do you present it, who wants to see, and what kind of interest people got in properties. And not just that, not just the search perspective, how the due diligence would happen. Because when you actually start creating identities of individual digital identities, and then you start attaching those identities with the digital mirror of their property, I mean the tokenized version of the property, it cuts down a lot of paperwork in between. Of course, cutting down paperwork solves a lot of environmental problems as well. But I'm not saying that directly, because people would come and say like, oh, Bitcoin consumes a lot of energy too. But this is not about Bitcoin, right? This is about more. This is about building the right solution. We're not pushing in blockchain. We're just focusing on the use case needs, and then there are so many protocols out there which we can fit here. So due diligence is something which is very, very close to who owns what, and proving that. And in fact, not just proving that, maybe it's the provenance of the property as well at times, that the chain of ownership. So diligence actually becomes very, very interesting when it comes to blockchain. When you have digital identities in place, you cannot just only prove that who owns it now. You can also prove very properly and appropriately that what is the chain of ownership, and when somebody bought it, how it is transferred, and how it is owned. So it improves a lot of pre-purchase due diligence. And then it reduces the need for intermediaries. Of course, again, mapping to the characteristics, you can now imagine that how this actually happens. The concept of property dealers or brokers in between is a thing of the past. Like Anup said, for the audits, I would say it again, it's a thing of the past. And it's good for everybody, right? We would want to connect to the right audience, do the right deal, directly participate in the transaction, rather than sit on the sidelines. And when the settlements can happen, ownership transfers can happen directly, then it not only saves you cost but time as well, and a lot of hassle and burning your brain muscles too. What it means to have a smart contract based property system, because we already digitized it. We created a digital mirror of our property. We had no intermediaries. We got ledgers which could show who owns what and all, prove the chain of ownership and all, everything. But when you transact, how do you transact? The only way on a chain, or the only way to write on a chain, is through a smart contract. Now, when you program all these business logics of real estate into the chain through smart contracts, you're practically writing smart contracts for the property, how it is traded. In fact, you can attach will inheritance with the property, that how the ownership should transfer based on certain validity rules or certain triggers automatically. So it's not just about manually doing these transactions, but attaching them with these kind of other smart contract logics too. Of course, it would require a wider ecosystem to come in and then connect, but then it's a thought which can come in when the ecosystem actually establishes itself the right way. Payments through smart contracts can happen, as well. Uh, in fact, there is, without a third party, you can have systems where property can be bought and sold based on certain triggers, certain rules, and in fact, multi-party can participate and bid, and those kind of initiatives can also be supported through smart contracts, where people can come in and participate anonymously without knowing others' participation. Hence, safer property transactions, because you don't have to worry about if the transaction is valid or not. The ledger would ensure so. The validation will ensure so. And you don't have to worry about, fraudulent activities, specifically, what happens in real life is if the transactions are taken care by smart contracts or are further, achieved through smart contracts. So safer transaction is something which comes automatically to it. And then, of course, anybody can come into real estate business. It's very similar to, how artwork has been tokenized nowadays, collectibles has been tokenized nowadays. You and I, we can click and own, right? We don't have to go to, some fine art show and purchase it like that and all. We can simply click and own. So it's not just the advantage of the digital world, but it's also the advantage of the technologies underneath, which is further enabling this digital era. And then for the people who understand it into the financial terms, it's about turning the real estate into a liquid asset and giving you more control on top of your asset, and making it pretty easier in how you can trade it. So again, if you see, these are the outcomes or the benefits or the expectations of the use case or the real estate industry as in one. But then the characteristics of blockchain, they map it pretty much the same way, kind of the same way as it maps into the other industries, like we have seen in the payments. So transparency, due diligence, identity, transaction settlement, safety and security, all are pretty much same in here too. Now let's move on to data security. Data has been, the key. It is being called the new oil of this era, and we are being more sensitive about, how it is stored, where it is stored, what can happen to it, and all, and what kind of systems are required in the next few years to cater the demands of data security. So again, blockchain's characteristics are very ethereal to these kind of use cases when it comes to providing substantial capabilities. So if you see from the verification of what do you download, the binaries, the executable, the software, the licensing of it and all, it can be packed pretty heavily with blockchain to ensure that whatever you do, you execute, you have, is verified. Now the old method was to keep the checksums and all. If you look at the checksum, it's nothing but some kind of a hash of a file. So every time this file changes, the hash or this checksum changes. So it was pretty easy to verify. But now, how do you verify if you do not know what was the original hash or checksum was? So this means the release of the software itself and the license of it attaches itself to that sum publicly, which is made publicly available. So when you're downloading something, when you're getting access to something, you know that this is what something is because that's available on a ledger, which you have access to for verification purposes. Then DOS attacks, denial of service, distributed denial of service attacks, they are a thing of the past too. In fact, blockchain can make it further complicated for these attacks to happen. You got private keys, which you can secure in a very different way, because we are not just creating identities, we are also attaching those identities to real world data. And then those identities are further enabling you access to real world applications and real world assets, of course, at times digitally available. So your keys can be your digital access to a lot many things, and then those keys can be created in a way that they are connected to your real world organisms as well, like your Face ID, your thumbprints and bioprints, and your retinal scans and all. So you can create keys in a way that they're pretty much you, and wherever you are, you got access to whatever you have or you own. And then further attacks on the system, automated systems are handled because we've been consistently talking about how everything would start happening on its own. Smart contract would come in and start doing a lot of trigger based or validity rule based transactions and executions. So when that happens, it clearly means that you would require, or you are actually further securing the automated systems and the hacks on it. And there has been, very old saying, I'll call it old saying because it's been there since the inception of the chain, that you have to attack a substantial amount of machines to, I'll not say 51% because that limits itself to a limited or a specific algorithm, but I would say you have to attack multiple parties. You have to have adversaries which can influence a lot of people, a lot of machines to get access to or attack any system. And then you got more secure domain name systems nowadays available to you, which I think a lot of people are using ENSs. And then decentralized data storage has further enabled us to do things, which kind of is killing the centralized monopoly a lot. In fact, it is a must when you are sharing, when you're creating use cases where data exchange is required. For example, a supply chain use case where you got goods received notifications, you got purchase orders, you got invoices which you would want in the system to be made available all the time. If you are doing trade finance, you require letter of credit and all, and a lot of documentation to keep the system fast, keep the system operational. So this is all done through decentralized data storage. The most prominent use case of it, which the world has seen until date, is it's in the NFT ecosystem where we are storing assets, and the digital form of them. For example, a collectible or an artwork which you're storing in a digital form, and you would have to share. So the real file is just stored in a decentralized storage, so that nobody can delete the existence of it. People would have access to it openly. But then certain use cases also demand that you encrypt it, even if it is on a public decentralized data storage. You create private consortium of decentralized data storage machines and nodes. So those kind of technicalities are being worked out nowadays to fit it to different use cases. But all I'm trying to say here is that this is very integral to data security. And then securing edge devices. This includes routers, edge computing machines, sensors, and a lot of other IoT devices. By allowing them, having their own digital identities, key-based identities, and participate in the system up to a very good level, and in a way that you can trust the data they're sending. This is very specific to supply chain use cases. Or I would say very easy to draw an analogy to when IoT devices are sending specific information about temperature, pressure, and other parameters of a shipment which is traveling from one warehouse to another warehouse, and it matters. And then going further, you got data veracity, you got computer hardware provenance, because you're not only attaching the identity to humans, you can also attach these identities to machines. And in fact, this is going to be very, very important in a world of tomorrow where machine-to-machine transactions would also come in play. So you would want to find the faulty machine, the fraudulent machine out of the game. And public key infrastructure, it's reshaping very rapidly using the use of the technology. I would give you just one example. There have been plenty of the hacks in the past, so it's not very tough to understand how our browsers, HTTPS, those SSL certifications happen. There is a certification issuing authority, and that's how you get to know that, oh, this is a valid certificate and all in your browser, and you see so. And that's how your browser tells you, oh, this is a secure site you can visit and all. But what if your issuer is compromised? So This is one of the areas where blockchain is actually changing the game as well. And beyond data security, if we talk about logistics, we, of course, in a way already talked about logistics, but if we talk about it in a clear way, we require very simplified document workflow. When I said letter of credit, POs, invoices, goods received notifications, and a lot of documentation, you don't want to wait for the documents to happen. You don't want to have doubts about the documentation, specifically when the typical enterprise resource planning softwares, ERPs, are sitting in silos with different organizations. You would want them to come together and share data. I'll give you one example of it. For example, if there is a supplier and there is a distributor, and supplier is supposed to send something to a distributor, then in this process, a lot of document exchange happens, which they need to share with each other, and then they have to trust the documents as well and question the documents too. But if you allow them to become part of one chain by having a node each in the chain, and then let smart contracts drive the flow of the business processes, and then whatever the documents which are being generated are to be stored on decentralized storage with specific access and permissions given to who can access them when, then you kind of very simply implement a document workflow where not only permissions and access is secured between multiple parties instead of those documents are stored in silos, but you also cut down the need of distrust, dispute, and reconciliation between these parties. And this saves a lot of time and cost. Why trade finance systems nowadays are offering or are cutting down the time of the whole cycle by 75% or 95% because of this. And then optimal delivery way, there are systems which does it. There are centralized systems which does it. But then when you connect a lot of systems on a chain, including the devices, IoT devices and all, which keeps a lot of geopositional data or GPS related parameters into the system, then you improve it big time. Now you must be thinking that existing systems does it already. What's the point? But I'm talking about multiple organizations here, suppliers, distributors, which are not connected, or they're dependent on logistic partner of theirs. And this logistic partner may be operating for 10 different organizations, but the data sharing is not happening. So there are a lot of parameters which would then open up with specific trust and security, so that it is used for the right purposes. Certification is very, very obvious. You can create digital certifications and attach them to different products and policies, and in fact, the processes are happening in a logistic ecosystem. Fraud reduction, it happens because of the digitization of things, because of automation of executions of different transactions through smart contracts. No middlemen or intermediaries would be in play. This is what the access or availability of smart contract allow us to do. Now, again, in like we talked about in previous 3-4 use cases, it does not differ in the sense how it is to be used in media and entertainment, but it has got some unique advantages too. We've been very accustomed to DRM and similar technologies when it comes to secure digital content. But blockchain can actually secure it in a different way by allowing the storage of these systems on a decentralized storage, and then having the access based on the digital identities or key basis. I'll give you certain examples which are very surprising. For example, why do you need, or we need, YouTube in between? Why do you want to see ads when the content is not generated by YouTube, but the content is generated by someone else and to be seen by you? Why there is a cost which YouTube has to take in between? That's a typical case of when an intermediary comes in play. This is what happens. If you talk about royalty payments, So royalty payments are something which has been in question for a very long time, because you cannot prove how many times what is being consumed in digital or media industry. For example, a music clip or a ringback tone which plays in your mobile phone when you ring somebody, and that license or permission has been taken from somebody for these X many number of times. So in those cases, there is no proof of how many times of what has been utilized or played or consumed. So using using blockchain, you can actually record everything on the ledger and settle payments accordingly. So it streamlines, the royalty based payments and consumption of the media in audio and other video files, as well as it gives pretty much 100% transparency to all the parties. Of course, we on the other end do not require to see how many other people have seen this, but at times we do. But most of it is important to the data generator or content creator. Micropayments and other usage-based payment models are going to thrive on top of blockchain, because this is what comes in obvious to it. And nowadays we need it too. We rent a lot of movies, we buy a lot of movies and content, but now, or as of today, we buy it from the providers or the aggregators, you would say. But tomorrow, when blockchain kind of a technology can connect the consumers and the content creators directly one-on-one, then micropayments and these payments would be very, very different. And usage-based means pay on the usage. You don't pay if you don't use. You would have different models coming in. For example, if you have seen it this much or that much, an advertisement has been played these many seconds and all. So a lot of usage-based payment models would come in, which will drive the industry forward and make it more optimized. Hassle-free for the users, hassle-free for the content creators, and both ways. And the first point and the third point I talked about, the royalty payments. It's pretty much similar that the advertisement engagement metrics will become immutable. Why do we need it? We all know why do we need it, because there is no transparency. Today Google tells you that they have got you these many impressions on your video. You just have to trust it. What can you do? They've got a database, and that's what you got to trust. We can never question it. But if you start putting a technology like blockchain around it, things start changing. They are not the middlemen, then they are not the only ledger, and then you got more access, more control on what is happening to your content. And whatever is happening, it's not just known to you, it's also immutable. Nobody can change that. And if nobody can change that, you get your claims done right, you got your payments done right, you got disputes handled automatically, because there are no disputes practically in this case. We already talked about removal of middlemen. Fraud and privacy prevention is something which I still and myself doubt. I'm not 100% satisfied myself that it would happen, but I do see certain potential coming out, because until the content can be copied, it still can be copied, right, as it is. Then until that is not solved, I don't believe that this can be 100% handled. But still, there are mechanisms which are coming out which require you to have certain sort of blockchain enabled ACS licensing, content encryption in play to do elevate the level of it. I would say, I would not say it is 100% securing it or avoiding it, but elevate the level of security and privacy into the media and entertainment content. Healthcare is no different. In healthcare, we already are seeing a lot of game-changing things happening. I would talk about some things which are beyond this slide too. So we have electronic health records. Now we are allowed anonymity in them as well. We are allowed what can be shared, what cannot be shared. You visit one hospital, you don't have to worry about when you visit the next hospital about the reports, about the data, about the lab specific details, the history of yours. whatever it is, you don't have to worry about it because it's automatically allowed and given on your permission, because it's available on either one ledger, if not one, then on multiple ledgers, but then interoperable ledgers, I would say. So it allows a lot of flexibility in healthcare systems. And in fact, like in media and entertainment, it allows a lot of different, models to come out, which points to a better, healthcare for human beings. I'll give you certain examples. Uh, you know, I know that rest of them are understood on their own, on their own. Be it, patient monitoring, patient data management, direct payments and all, even drug supply and tracking. You must have figured it out already. But there is a use case which is very unique nowadays. Imagine you're going to 10 hospitals or maybe 15 labs in your lifetime. I wish you should not, or you do not have to. But I wish if just assume if one has to, then there is a lot of data he's generating or she's generating. And there are so many like us who are generating this data every other day. But what and how this data is contributing to better cure, better healthcare alternatives for future? I'll tell you how. People are focusing a lot on AI ML nowadays. They're saying that understanding the patterns of years and years of data with different type of variations of diseases and all can help us create a better version of medication, better version of approach towards a disease in tomorrow's time. But to run those models on those data sets would require all those data sets. The current system says that you accumulate everything in one data center, then you run very heavy machines, very heavy compute and storage intensive machines to train those models. And then even though you don't have all the data with you, what if multiple blockchain based interoperable ledgers would come in play, and then models will be traveling to these data lakes rather than data is traveling to models, because we are decentralizing data by putting it onto the ledger and decentralized storage combined. When that is happening, you're actually allowing a very decentralized data record pool, health record pool, patient data pool to take place or come into existence. When that happens, which is a decentralized one, you require machine learning models to reach to the data, get trained at every different point, come back, get aggregated, then go back to those data lakes again, rather than data getting accumulated everywhere. So this is going to be one of the ways we can fight off the challenge of AI and ML world, where data is the problem. They require all the data in the world to solve a lot many problems, but they would never get all the data in the world ever. But then this kind of multi-chain, interoperable chain environment or ledger environment would actually solve it if we apply different kind of decentralized machine learning logic to it. A lot of us know about it already, because it is already being used. It is going by the name of federated learning. It is slightly different than properly decentralized machine learning, I would say, because you send the models to 10 places, they come back to one place, aggregate themselves, get the federated aggregated average, then travel back to these 10 locations again. But there would be a better version of it where permissioning on the data, which institution and all would be done through smart contracts. And then model training, when it can happen, when it is allowed, when it is not allowed, can also happen through smart contracts. And the ledger will keep the core data, while the decentralized storage will keep all the PNG files, scans, PDFs, scans, all the medical record, big files into it. And then the sum of it would facilitate such a thing. It's too early to say that it would happen like next year, next month, but it would happen sometime in future. Experiments are already on. In fact, we at Zeeve, we've been part of some of those experiments. We are working very closely with Intel on decentralized machine learning solutions. So of course, tomorrow's world would see those kind of solutions. And then this is about transportation. It again is a combination of so many things, including the logistics, the supply chain, the fraudulent activities, theft prevention, the messaging, the information exchange between systems and silos, keeping what needs to be isolated and yet sharing what needs to be shared. So this improves a lot of things. I will not go deeper into it because most of the points are pretty obvious when you read them. Like I said, we're doing use case analysis, and you being subject matter expertise or subject matter experts, so having the experts around you can dig into a use case up to a depth it is required to. But the topic for us today is to analyze it from the perspective of the blockchain, so that we understand that when it gets applied to a use case, what can it change, what it cannot change, what kind of benefits it can generate, what kind of challenges it can throw. So we are discussing those things, kind of analyzing it back and forth. Now this is for the government use cases. Now government use cases are not different in the sense that they would use blockchain differently. It is that they're more of taken up by the government themselves, the kind of systems they regulate or they define and validate. So voting, of course, electoral systems are the ones which have been talked the most about since the time of the blockchain, next to the financial systems and digital record management system. And it's technically possible, but yes, it'll take its own course and it's time for the governments to adopt. But yeah, like national digital currencies are coming in, we are very sure and soon to see these voting systems to come in as well. Then customs and border patrol, transparent budgeting, data entry again connects back to the data integrity, data security challenges we talked about, or the outcomes we talked about. Then replacing paper-based systems, we need it more than anything as of today, because of the global warming challenges, because of the time and effort it takes to reconcile and all. So we require not just digitization, but 100% paperless systems. And then it's combating corruption to a level where it's becoming overwhelming nowadays in some countries or some places across the globe, and and in some scenarios where we want transparency to fight it off. In fact, in charity, UNO, WHO charities, it's being a real pain right now. And then shared service models. So government is already doing a lot of initiatives in this area. So it's actually happening and being possible because of the underlying technology and what it has to offer. So it's further enabling us to create shared service models where participative economy can actually thrive and come in. So these are the use cases which are mostly talked about when we think of blockchain. But then a lot of possibilities exist in gaming, insurance, music, advertisement, marketing, sales, automotive, telecommunication, defense and aerospace. In fact, in telecommunication, imagine if you can roam around the globe without no SIM change. A digital eSIM of yours is connected to a word of blockchain-based ecosystem at the back, which is across providers, and you don't have to deal with this SIM change, that SIM change. You can simply roam with one eSIM, getting reprogrammed or getting redefined using its own identity, which is connected to you with different, and then all the interconnection charges are settled in real time. No disputes are happening between players in the end. Because in telecommunication, what happens is one player would say, if you're on roaming at the back, this happens, they raise a bill to each other. One player would say the call was 3 minutes 1 second. The other player would say, no, my system says it's 3 minutes. Who's going to solve this? The court cases for these interconnection charges would remain open, and there are like millions of dollars of cases every month which are happening like that, and they're unsolved because those disputes cannot be handled. So there are more cases. In fact, in the defense industry, there are a lot of use cases happening, which are happening around cybersecurity, battlefield management systems, and whatnot. So I think I'll now open up the session for us to share if we have to share, ask if we have to ask, detail if we have to detail. I think I'll take up one point from TimeAid. I think we'll speak about it separately. TimeAid, Jan Baker is asking which industries are further ahead with implementation than others. Yeah, I think this is fantastic. So, what we have seen is that telecommunication is actually ahead. Fintech and BFSI is, of course, ahead comparing others. Supply chain is I would say, it is a very close competitor to both of these, telecom and BFSI and fintech. Other industries are picking up. That's where, the major adoption is happening in 2022 and the coming year. That's where it is happening more. But these three are the torch bearers, fintech, BFSI, supply chain, trade finance, and then telecommunication. These three are torch bearers until date. So Yusuf is asking that his interest is in real estate, especially application in the title recording. Where can I learn more about this use case? So Yusuf, you can connect with us as well, or you can look over the internet. Maybe if you'll connect with us, we'll be able to share some links where you can read about it more and more. So that's a possibility, but you can also read about there are prominent use cases which people have done and put out the material and webinars and sessions upon. In fact, we ourselves have done it in the past, so you can look up to those contents. Let's just connect with us directly. You can visit. You can simply. I think everybody can write to support@zeeve.io if they need to dig into further use cases, and then you need some advice on how to plan. We can actually get onto a call. In fact, I think Timid, you can also write it to us. I'll put the email into the chat. In fact, you can write it to me directly as well. I'll put my email as well. Right. Yeah. All right. So for further inputs, questions, feel free to write to us, and we'll be happy to get onto a call and give you time in discussion and the desired outcome. And thank you very much for joining it today. Specifically, the ones from Asia region in India. It's pretty late here, almost midnight. And we'll probably talk again on the next session. We still have 2 sessions left on, this series. I think the next 2 will be more exciting. Today's was, slightly boring, I understand, because it was, pretty much in between. And anonymous attendee, somebody is asking, can you please put up the medical slide again and go over it one more time? Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Just give me a sec. Yeah. So, this slide was where, we were talking on different angles we can take up using blockchain as a technology. So electronic health records with multiple medical and healthcare institutions coming in play, research labs coming in play, where we do not only aggregate the history of what kind of diseases patients have been going through and all. When I'm talking about this, I'm saying that we are definitely anonymizing the data. We are not sharing everything without the patients agreeing to it. We're keeping it that way, but then we are also allowing this data to be shared when the patient wants to share, so that not all the tests are happening again. The clinical history is very clear and known every time you visit another hospital, another institution, and speak about or share your patient, share your history as a patient. And then further, we talked about the federated learning and decentralized machine learning models coming into play, solving the problem of the data not getting accumulated in one place, while in this case data is going to be available, and the models can go to the data rather than data coming to the models to train. Another question from John Baker is, which industry needs blockchain to implement it like tomorrow, because it is so far behind or corrupted? I would say every industry is corrupted today. So if I can implement blockchain to every corrupt thing, I'll do it tomorrow. What industry? I would say it should be supply chain, because after COVID, we need the transparency into the supply chain the most. You need to know what drug you are buying, and if it is all right, okay, in shape. What food you're eating, it is all right, it is in shape. These are vitals to us. I would say supply chain is something which we must have in our today's time, built on something like we can trust. Yeah, thank you, John. I could only do justice to limited things within the session, and thank you everyone else for attending this. Another question from another anonymous attendee: how the use case can be identified with respect to whether go to public or private blockchain, and more specifically, which private blockchain? So to answer this question, I think you can go to the recording of our second episode of this webinar series, but I'll still talk about it in a quick way. So mostly when you have to choose between public and private, you choose about the data sharing model, the schema, the access control, what kind of stakeholders are coming in, what are the privacy and security requirements of the of the ledger. So that's what it is mostly about between public and private. So if you require security, privacy, ACL, limited stakeholders, faster throughput, and those kind of things, you go to private blockchain. And in private, you got some alternatives like Hyperledger framework is there. Under Hyperledger, you got Fabric, Sawtooth, you got Besu as well. On the permission less ones, you have Avalanche, Polkadot, Ethereum, Binance, Phantom, Polygon, a lot many others available to you. So this actually comes down to the choice of what your use case demands. So just go back to maybe the episode 2 recording, and it would give you enough insights. And if you need some more advice, you can connect us on the email IDs I've written down, and we'll plan a call and maybe discuss further on this. I hope this answers. Right. So yeah, another question from some anonymous attendee again. How does direct service payment vary from any other payment on the blockchain? Now, this is very critical. Usually the payment system is seen how it is today, where we have middle parties, we have got a lot of. So I'll just simply talk about insurance, for example, medical insurance. Now you got a medical insurance party. You have to go through a process where the payments are happening through the medical insurance company to the hospital when you are getting admitted, and then you got to there are a lot of rules and regulations which are need to be followed and all. So this would cut down a lot of those kind of scenarios where payment requirements are well mapped with the usage requirements. So the context was to map it to the usability model. And so I'm not saying that payments will always have to be direct. I'm saying they have to be well aligned and mapped to the usability model, the utility model of the use case. Right. I think with this, I'll close the session today, and I'll expect to hear from you all some more exciting questions and inputs, and we can probably should be scheduling more calls and answering them there. Thank you very much for joining in, and see you on the next session. I think I'll answer one more question. How the privacy of the health record can be guaranteed once on the digital ledger? It's a right question. So this depends upon how do you design a use case. For example, if you use key-based encryption, keys which you own or are only known to you on the digital records, and they are to be shown or shared only when you would allow access, and they cannot be stored anywhere at all, but only read-only access is given anytime you would want, and it is revoked based on your keys and all again. I'm not 100% convinced until, like I said in the media use case, that once it is decrypted and allowed access to, it can be shared, copied. So that piece is still being worked out. In fact, a lot of trusted execution environment-based solutions are coming in where, even the storage is being done that way. So it is done based on the private key-based encryptions on the decentralized storage, but not 100% efficient yet. All right, I think that was the last question. We'll close the session here. Thank you everyone for joining in. Talk to you soon on the next episode. One last question. Can we have read-only records? Yes, we can have read-only records as well. That's very possibility. All right. Stopping the share, saying goodbye. Talk to you guys soon.